Hey all, welcome back to the channel. It's Monday. That means it's countdown day here on the channel. And this is a bit of an interesting one, and I will explain why. You see, in every great conflict, in every great battle of good versus evil, blasters are probably going to be involved. Certainly in many of the long-standing cartoon franchises that we all know and love. Transformers notwithstanding. And it felt like it was high time that we look at the top 10 Transformers blasters, as voted on by fans all across social media. But it comes with a little bit of a caveat. The caveat being that we, did this topic before. Yes, I made a mistake. In doing my research and going back, somehow I missed the fact that we looked at this in the March 28th episode. That was pointed out to me by our buddy Daniel Allen Lee. So Daniel, big shout out to you, buddy. You are keen. Nevertheless, even though I made the mistake in the topic, the voting went ahead, and we're going to do kind of an update to that list, if you will. We're going to see sort of how well this one falls in line with the original. Now, to be fair, I'm not going to reference the original list at all. I will put a link to the video in the end screen if you want to compare how the voting went for this one and that one. Hopefully this will be something that won't happen again, but after so many years of doing this, it was bound to happen once or twice. Usually I catch it. I didn't in this case. Such is life. Nevertheless, the voting was the voting. So once again, we're going to take a look at the top 10 blasters in all of Transformers in the latest GotBot Counts Down. Hey all, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, your most humble of hosts, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, man, please like, comment, share, of course, subscribe, and while you're at it, my baby, hit that notification bell, please. It helps me out a ton, and it lets you know when content of all sorts goes up here on the channel. Check out Machinery of Man, The Everything Factor, all the groups that I'm either a mod or an admin for, as well as all of my social media links. All of that in the description down below. Also in the description down below, and if you're in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link. You can check us out on Patreon. You can see what we have to offer to you through Spring. Or, of course, you can hit the join button right here on YouTube and become a channel member at any given time. And like I said, this is... I don't really want to call it an update per se. It was a mistake. I made a mistake. I'm redoing a topic that we did about 6 months or so ago. And I certainly didn't mean to do that, but such is life. And now that the voting is over, now that it's all done, it is what it is. It's done. We're going to do it once again. It will be interesting to see kind of voting habits for those who, who care to compare this one to the one done in March. It'll be interesting to see who sort of ended up in the same location. Is the voting consistent? In a way, it's a bit of a happy accident. While I'm not going to reference the original list at all, and if you choose to just ignore the original list, that's your prerogative as well, it will be very interesting to see, did the habits tend to go the same way, at least for the most part? Because if they did, then it really adds a bit of credence to the voting and how we do our best around here to make these lists as independent as they can be. And voting, majority rules voting, one person gets one vote. I need the actual names, like pictures and stuff don't count. Multiple votes, they don't count. Because it has to be fair to everybody, right? That's the thing. It has to be fair to everybody the world over. Okay, let's look at our honorable mentions first. This time around, we had some great honorable mentions. The first being Bay vs. Sentinel Prime. Yes, he had a very effective arsenal, a very effective blaster. Was enough to take out poor old Ironhide. We also have Soundwave. Of course, a lot of his blasters rely on using sound waves, which totally makes sense. Fort Max, Fort Max was in our Overpowered last week. He has that huge blaster. He also has the blasters on his legs. Yeah, I get it. Swerve's My First Blaster. Made famous, I do believe, by the IDW comics. Tarn's double fusion cannons on his arms. I'll tell you now, Tarn, very, very close on this list. I'm willing to bet that if this was done a year from now, when the Voyager class Tarn came out and, everybody would already have that, I bet you Tarn would not only make the list, but I bet you he'd be a lot higher. Nevertheless, he was an honorable mention here. Age of Extinction Hound and his Gatling guns. I want to say he might have actually made the list last time, but he was an honorable mention here. And Galaxy Convoys, or Cybertron Optimus Prime, if you will, Super Mode Hyper Cannons. It's basically the two gigantic things that I think are like the fire truck parts, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, great honorable mentions. They did not make this list, so who did? Well, what we're going to do, as we always do, and kick things off with number 10 first. But I'm going to note something. Number 10 is actually a tie. That's where we're going to start. I said number 10 is a tie. And number 10 refers to the only two target masters to make it on the list. Singe and Hair Splitter. Yeah, Singe and Hair Splitter both made the list. For those who don't know, Singe, our purple lad over here, is basically a flamethrower. And Hair Splitter, depends. If we're talking G1, he's like a auto target lock laser cannon thing. Most recently, he's a manifold ion particle beam. So it is, either way, it's a powerful laser blaster, flamethrower, laser blaster. Two of them got the exact same number of votes. I'm kind of glad that was sort of a happy accident of how it worked out. Singe, Hair Splitter, and I do love me some Spinister, man. I'm so glad that this target master with his partners took the number 10 slot. For number 9, we have not one but two blasters by way of Jetfire, or Skyfire if you prefer, and his two huge hand cannons that he holds. These are actually the Shattered Glass versions. You might notice by the purple down here, but it's the same thing that the Siege lad comes with. People voted for this because they said, like, independently, like, these are gigantic blasters with huge barrels. But then, of course, as we all know, you can put them together, and this one gigantic blaster now becomes a double-barreled, super-duper gigantic blaster. Hard to argue with it. Not to mention that the Siege iteration of Jetfire also has a number of other blasters, like ones on his arms, for example. Yeah, the guy's armed up, the guy's strong, but this is the blaster that caught fans' attention when they voted for him. And it helped Jetfire, or Skyfire, whichever name you prefer, solidify himself, because of this, at the number 9 slot. Number 8 is one of the most classic of all armaments within Transformers, of all blasters within Transformers, and it's the Null Ray. Starscream's Null Rays. Now, some people voted for the G1, some people voted for the really, like, over-the-shoulder, very extra powerful ones from Armada, I guess it was. And I didn't even know that the ones over his shoulder were called null rays. What do I know? Anyway, you cut it. The Null Ray is the Null Ray because it does the same thing. When it is fired, when it hits something, it stops all electronic, impulse, synapses, flow, everything. It basically shuts things down, hence the name null. It nullifies electrical flow. That's what it does. And apparently, from what I can gather, going across fiction, at least in Starscream's case, not necessarily for all of the Seekers, but certainly in Starscream's case, it seems pretty consistent that his Null Rays are his Null Rays and that his Null Rays do the same thing. So, basically, whatever iteration of Starscream you know and love, his Null Rays take the number 8 slot. Coming in at number 7 is Metroplex's huge red cannon. I absolutely get it. I mean, Metroplex is a titan. He's a city. He's gigantic. His armament, his blaster that he holds in his gigantic, ginormous hand is going to wreak chaos and damage. There's no doubt about it. Of course, there was one voter who said, while that's cool and while that's great, honestly, he doesn't really need it, because just look at the War for Cybertron, Fall of Cybertron series, where, quite frankly, he literally pulverized Megatron into the ground by just punching him over and over. Nevertheless, it's hard to argue with how impressive and how formidable this thing really is. And for that reason, Metroplex and his big red blaster, with a little bit of 6-gun on top here, takes the number 7 slot. Coming in at number 6 is the cold and cruel Shockwave. He who transforms into... It's so weird. Either he's a huge alien laser blaster that is so gigantic that it services as its own kind of cannon embankment type of thing, like an anti-aircraft type of cannon, or Sometimes he even holds himself, or he is, I guess, the right-hand size for a combiner, as wielded by Bruticus. Whether he is servicing as like a huge cannon embankment, whether he's holding himself, or whether he's being used and wielded by a combiner, he is one of the most formidable, dangerous of all laser blasters across the galaxy. And for that reason, Shockwave himself takes the number 6 slot. And here we are at the most coveted of locations once again, the halfway mark. And at the halfway mark, we have perhaps the most absolutely fitting character on this list by way of Blaster himself. But more specifically, Blaster's Blaster. Now this is the Shattered Glass version, and while I do have the regular one just up and over there, this was a pure excuse for me to show this guy off, largely because he is going to be reviewed this week. Tomorrow maybe? I think tomorrow is going to be his review. So why not show him off earlier? Anyway, you cut it. His blaster, whether it's the Shattered Glass or whether it's the regular, is the Electro Scrambler. A very formidable and dangerous piece of equipment. Whereas Starscream's Null Rays nullify electrical impulses, his basically cause them to go haywire in anything that has electricity. Robots, vehicles, the human nervous system. And while Blaster would rather not find out if that's the case for sure or not, Shattered Glass Blaster likes to see those humans pop when their electrical impulses go haywire. A very, very dangerous piece of equipment when wielded by the bad guys. Blaster's Electro Scrambler takes the number 5 slot. Coming in at number 4, we have he who has appeared at this location on the list more times than anyone else. I'm talking, of course, about Grimlock and his double-barrel blaster. Wait, that's not the name of it. It has the best name. It is the Galaxial Rocket Launcher. This thing's not just a blaster, it's a rocket launcher, and it's only one of the armaments used by Grimlock. Would you expect anything less than a handheld rocket launcher for the leader of the Dinobots? I wouldn't, and for that reason, Grimlock takes the number 4 slot. Coming in at number 3, we have a blaster that is wielded and brought out when only all attempts at peace have been exhausted. I'm talking about Optimus Prime's Ion Blaster. This gigantic rifle is noted as being one of the most powerful of all Transformers blasters. It's not only gigantic, and it not only has quite a kickback, but it is the thing that was forged to be wielded by the leader of the Autobots. It is meant to really only be used in the most dire of situations when, when all hope is gone. It is the last stop between unleashing the power of the Matrix. I would call that one heck of a blaster, and for that reason, Optimus's Ion Blaster takes the number 3 slot. Coming in at number 2, we have the dreaded Particle Beam. It is Galvatron's Particle Beam, the huge particle cannon on his arm. Basically, this thing can be used to disintegrate bots, turning them to ash, as evidenced by Starscream in Transformers the movie, or it can absolutely be used to destroy the center of a planet and thereby destroy an entire planet. And what does Galvatron do with such power, with such a magnificent blaster? Why, he just casually wears it on his arm. Imagine a planet-destroying blaster facing you square right here. That is why this is so dreaded, and that is why Galvatron, along with the Particle Beam, takes the number 2 slot. And here we are once again at number 1. This may have been the number 1 last time as well. I don't know, I don't recall. But it is the dreaded Megatron and his ultra-powerful fusion cannon. Now, some people who voted for Megatron voted for him when he's being used and wielded himself. Some voted for his fusion cannon on his arm. Any way you cut it, by itself, it is an ultra-powerful and an ultra-dangerous weapon that has really extinguished the sparks of many Transformers over the years. But let's not forget that this thing also has the power to connect to black holes. Like, what kind of destructive force can he actually wield if he calls upon that power. It is dangerous. It also is something to be used only when Megatron feels his most threatened. Megatron's fusion cannon easily took the #1 slot. And there you go, 10 down to 1 once again. And I'm going to throw one in here now myself that I want to specifically shout out that I think probably appeared on the other list. And it's the Requiem Blaster. An artifact of the Primes, forged by Solus Prime herself and used by Megatronus. I mean, you want to talk about a god-level threat of a blaster. You want to talk about something that encapsulates Primus himself. You got to talk about the Requiem Blaster. I think it should have absolutely been on the list. I would have voted for it myself had I been voting. Bruticus, he had votes just because all of the other Combaticons' armaments can go together to give him a huge blaster. God Ginrai, specifically for his shoulder cannons. Firebolt got some votes, as did Spoil Sport. Scattershot, and I think we all get it because the nose cone of the plane opens up to a huge cannon. G-Axis got some. Transformers Prime, Optimus Prime, and like I think it was called like the Buster Cannon or something. The V-Lock Cannon. The rifles that are used by the Datsuns. Beast Wars Rampage. What else do we have here? Cybertron Primus's Arc Cannon. That would have been a great one to make the list. Who else do we have here? I already mentioned the Requiem Blaster. G1 Cliffjumper's Gigantic Bazooka. Sinner Twin and his accessory. Oh, the blaster that Megatron used in the movie to shoot Optimus and basically extinguish his spark. I don't know who owned that little blaster. Hot Rod's Arm Blasters, The Last Night Hot Rod's Time Stopping Blaster, Big Convoy's Matrix Buster, for sure, Star Saber's V-Lock Cannon. So all of those and more. I hope that you enjoyed this one. By all means, check it out and compare it to the other one, you know? Why not? See how the voting played out. I appreciate you guys coming by, giving me some of your extremely valuable time. I do know how important it is to you. If you're in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link. You can check us out on Patreon. You can see what we have to offer to you through Spring, or of course you can hit the join button right here on YouTube and become a channel member at any time. Don't forget, man, to hit the subscribe button. Stick around. Have some fun with us here on the channel, and especially don't forget that somehow, some way, each and every single solitary day, whether you realize it or whether you don't, you right there, you do very much make a difference in the world. And I look forward to the next time that you and I get together to have another visit, either in the live streams on Thursday nights at the stop motion premieres or the old-fashioned way right here inside the videos.